Shalom, Malcolm. This the brother Karata's GMS Orlando, GMS Florida. So today we're gonna get into a lesson, man. Well, first things first, want to say all praise, Call Halal Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. All praise to Yahweh and His Son Yahushua. Double honors to our elders. Our elders are great millstone. All right, and peace and blessings to the brothers who go out there and teach in truth and in sincerity. If that's not the focus of your teaching, if you're not teaching in truth and sincerity, I'm not talking to you. Want to also say peace and blessings to the believers, those that believe. The brothers and the sisters that believe. Peace and blessings to you all. So today we're gonna come with a new lesson, okay? Right now, what you're looking at in front of you on this screen is the Paleo Hebrew, okay, or what we call Lashon Kodash, okay, the Holy Tongue. All right. Now, it's very important as Israelites that we start looking at this Lashon Kodash, our holy tongue. All right. This is our language. It belongs to us. And we love it because it belongs to us. All right. The Gentiles have their things, what they love. Those are the things that belong to them, such as the English language. Me personally, I hate the English language because to me it's a language that doesn't work well for me. Okay, it just doesn't convey messages well for me, in my opinion. But that's just me. Okay, so this language I really don't like to. If it was up to me, I wouldn't even speak English at all. I would just speak Lashon Kodash, what we call Lashon Kodash. You know how I spoke in the beginning of the video. I wouldn't even choose English. All right, but that's just my opinion. All right, so let's get on to the lesson, man. Let's get on to the lesson. Well, before I get into that, I want to say this. We where we teach at, there's a lot of Christians, man. All right, let me not say that. Where we teach at, there's a group of Christians, and we teach. We just go in the midst of them and teach. All right, they usually surround us, and they on their bullhorns, and we in the middle of it, in the thick of it, and we out there teaching the Most High Word, okay? And they always try to come up to us and start little arguments and say little shit. And we was having a conversation about 2 weeks ago, and we was talking about where, they was trying to say that we were taking the divinity from Yahushua because me personally said that Yahushua is not the Most High. Well, they read in 1 Timothy where it says that God came on the earth. Great is the mystery, God came on the earth and all that shit like that. Well, I told him, man, you have to go into the Greek and the Hebrew to understand, what that's talking about. Certain things in the scriptures, you have to go into the Greek and the Hebrew. Well, he didn't want to hear that shit. He said that because he asked me, well, are you saying that God's word is imperfect? The English is imperfect because all we need is the English. That's all we need. I replied, the English is imperfect. He then replied, well, are you saying that God cannot keep his word? I forget how they say it, keep his word from being impure? I said, no, the word is pure. It's just not pure in the English. You have to go behind the English. You have to read it in its proper context. You have to read it as looking through the eyes of the people that wrote it. You have to read it in the Hebrew. You have to go back and you have to look in the Hebrew because many words in the English are corrupted. And like I said, the English language falls short, all right, when it comes to the Hebrew. All right, so that's just the background of our conversation. That conversation wasn't on video. We didn't record that. It didn't make sense to record it. All right, so let's get to this lesson. All right, so okay, we'll start here. Why the English is unreliable. The The English is unreliable. You must go into the Hebrew and the Old Testament. The prologue of the wisdom of Yahushai, the son of Sirach. All right, this is the prologue from the book of Sirach. Okay? It says, wherefore let me entreat you to read it with favor and attention, and to pardon us wherein we may seem to come short of some words which we have labored to interpret. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference, okay? Have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. Meaning that whenever you take one language and you transfer and you take some writing or something from one language and you try to translate it into another language, it loses its significance. Why? Because along with your language continues your culture, okay? Within your language is a lot of your culture. Like within the English language is a lot of the English culture or Western culture or so-called white man's culture, okay? Certain love. What is the white man doesn't know how to love, okay? Europeans don't know what love is. Their culture doesn't. They come from a culture that war and that fought all the fucking time with each other. So their love has no meaning to it. Love is just a fucking in that definition, it's a strong desire towards something. It's not defined. What do you do if you love something? Okay? This is where the English language falls short, but it carries on their culture. This is why, if it was up to me, I would choose not to speak English, but speak Hebrew. All right? English is it's not a concrete language. It's not grounded in things that you can feel, taste, touch, and see. It's an abstract language, which is why you have in Christianity where it's just whatever you feel. Because the language carries on your culture. It carries your culture and it creates your culture. All right, so this is why when you translate things from Hebrew to English, it's not understandable to English speakers most of the time because they don't see things from the Hebrew mind. This is why when you read this is why Christians are saying that there's a virgin birth. This is why Christians are so gung-ho on baptizing, not understanding the reason for baptism. This is why when it says in 1st or 2nd John, whichever one it is, that the Holy Spirit, Yahushua, and the Father all agree. It said these three bear record in heaven and all agree they are one. They don't understand that when you say echad or we are one, it means that you're in agreement. You have a pact together, a league together. Okay, or you may even be married. Okay? But see, this is why you must go into the Hebrew and look at things from the understanding of the Israelites, to understand the scriptures of the Israelites and the sayings of the Israelites and the dark sayings when you read this prologue to Sirach. All right, things change when you translate them from one language to another. There's some things in Spanish that you cannot translate to English because there's no word that describes it. And Spanish speakers can speak on that. Okay? So, yeah, but it's also the English language and the Hebrew language come from two totally different worldviews. English coming from Latin and Greek being abstract versus Hebrew being concrete in manner. All right, so let's watch this first video.
Create in Genesis 1:1. Rather than attempting an interpretation from the English, one should at least be attempting to understand the text from its Hebraic origin. Through the use of an English Bible and a concordance, the student is able to find the Hebrew word used in the text that lies behind the English. When using this tool, it quickly becomes evident that the English translators of the text were not very consistent in how they translated Hebrew words. For instance, the Hebrew word nephesh is usually translated in the King James Version and other versions as soul. But in the King James Version, this is also translated as appetite, beast, body, breath, creature, dead, desire, ghost, heart, life, lust, man, mind, person, pleasure, self, thing, and will. The Hebrew verb natan means to give, but is often translated as add, allowed, apply, appoint, ascribe, assign, avenge, bestow, bring, cast, cause, charge, come, commit, consider, count, cry, deliver, direct, distribute, do, fasten forth, frame, get, grant, hang, have, heal, heed, lay, leave, left, lend, let, lift, make, occupy, offer, ordain, over, oversight, pay, perform, place, plant, pour, present, print, pull, put, recompense, requite, restore, send, set, shoot, show, sing, sit, slander, strike, submit, suffer, take, thrust, tie, trade, turn, utter, weep, willingly, withdrew, would, yell, and yield. While it is true that one English word cannot translate one Hebrew word perfectly, and some translational liberties are necessary, this should only be done out of necessity, and the change should be noted in a footnote to aid.
Okay, so that's it. So as you can see, when you move from Hebrew to English, it can't really be translated well. And a lot of the meaning is lost. That's why it says in the prologue to Sirach that for the same thing uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. Okay, it's a big difference when you try to translate it. That's why you must go into the scriptures and you must go into the Hebrew and the Greek to really understand what the scriptures are saying. And we'll show example of that as we move on, because you're gonna miss a lot and you're gonna fuck up a lot of the things in the scriptures if you don't go into the Hebrew. All right, and that's the problem with the whole thing of thinking that God and Jesus is the same, the Holy Trinity, that bullshit. Yeah, that's the whole problem with that. Oh, the virgin birth, that thing, not a lack of understanding of the Hebrew. All right? That's where you get these doctrines from. Okay, let's watch the next video.
The English vocabulary and its definitions are very inadequate in conveying the meanings of Hebrew words. In the following passages from the King James Version of the Bible, we find the word teach, an English word meaning to impart knowledge or skill, to give instruction. And thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws. I will give thee tables of stone, that thou mayest teach them. Now therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you. Teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. If not, hearken unto me, hold thy peace, and I shall teach thee wisdom. Each use of the word teach in these 6 passages is the English translation of 6 different Hebrew words, each with its own unique meaning. Yera, to point out the direction to go. Zahar, to advise caution. Lamad, to urge to go in a specific direction. Yada, to provide experience. Shanan, to sharpen. Alaf, to show through example. The original meaning of these 6 Hebrew words are completely erased and lost when they are simply translated as teach, demonstrating the need to go beyond the simple translations for proper interpretations.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's not much to say on that, so we're going to move to the next video.
That if you change one, you change. A culture is so closely tied to its language that if you change one, you change the other. Benjamin Lee Whorf stated in what has become known as the Whorf hypothesis that language is not simply a way of voicing ideas, but is the very thing which shapes those ideas.
Get over, if you will, is our thinking process, because you and I, most of us at least listen to my voice, I'm assuming, were not raised in a Hebrew culture. And let me also add that a Hebrew culture, a biblical Hebrew culture, is not the same as rabbinical Judaism. It's not the same as the modern Judaism today. I'm going to submit to you that Orthodox Judaism or modern Judaism in Israel today is as Hellenized as many other Western religions are. You know, Greek/Roman culture is the last cultures that conquered the Hebrew people. And God had already warned His people that when you are taken into captivity by these cultures and these nations, do not learn their ways. Do not learn to think like they do and act like they do and look at the world like they do. Because the nations of the world primarily view the Scriptures in many ways the opposite of those who wrote the Scriptures.
And that's the point exactly. So this is where you get these doctrines from about God, about the Most High, and who they call Jesus being the same entity. All right, this is where you get the doctrine of the virgin birth and the doctrine of hell where you burn forever, and all of this stuff like that, because these people these heathens picked up the Scriptures and without knowing our culture, have gone into it and made these doctrines up. This is the basic, like, this is the foundation of Christianity. This is why the English is unreliable and it falls short of the Hebrew. All right, you gotta go and you gotta look at you gotta look at the Hebrew behind the words and the Greek behind the words to understand the idea that the author is conveying to you from his culture. Okay?
We do have an assumption that Christian culture is biblical culture, and I think we've really got to rethink that. I mean, just because something is Christian doesn't mean it's necessarily biblically faithful.
Throughout the world, there are 2 major branches of philosophy, Western and Eastern. Western philosophy has its beginnings in the 6th century BC in Greece.
Now remember, these philosophies are carried through within the culture and by the language. The language promotes the culture, and the language also creates the culture. Okay?
with such philosophers as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Eastern philosophy has its roots in the ancient past and was the philosophy of all ancient cultures of the Far East, including China and Japan, the Middle East, including India and Babylon, and the Near East, including Egypt and Israel.
Most of our understanding of the Bible is filtered through what we call systematic theology. It's filtered through the system by the time we get it. And the Greek culture that we live in is inundated with abstract thinking. We don't think in concrete terms.
This is why you have something called theology, or seminary school. This is why, in order to be a priest, you must go through what? Seminary school. Right? Or you got to go to theology. Theo means God, and ology is the study of. Okay, but this is not the study of the true God or the scriptures. It's not studying the scriptures. It's studying philosophy of the scriptures, philosophy on the scriptures, commentary on the scriptures by Western thinkers. Okay, let me rewind that a little bit.
It's filtered through the system by the time we get it. And the Greek culture that we live in is inundated with abstract thinking. We don't think in concrete terms like Hebrew does. And so we're not trained to think that way.
Exactly. All right, so let's go to this last one.
While there are many differences between the Western and Eastern schools of thought, one of the major differences is the use of abstracts and concretes. Just as artwork may be created in the abstract or the concrete, words can also be created in the abstract or concrete. A concrete word, idea, or concept is something that can be perceived by the five senses. It can be seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. An abstract is something that cannot be perceived by the five senses. As the Bible was written from an Eastern philosophical perspective, it is important that we recognize that we cannot interpret it through our own Western philosophy. To do so would place a meaning and interpretation that may not be that of the original authors.
And that's the point exactly. All right, so let's move on. So we know that Yahweh doesn't want us worshiping other gods, or worshiping meaning reverencing or honoring other gods, right? Right? So let's read that. Exodus 23 and 24. Thou shalt not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them and quit break down their images. All right, quiet break down their images. Deuteronomy 11 and 16. Take heed to yourselves, that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. Worship means to reverence. Okay, to make weighty. Honor, which means honor in Hebrew means to make heavy. All right, so worship is H7812. All right, shechach. All right, it means to bow down or show reverence. Okay, it means to prostrate yourself. We're not to reverence or honor, and the word honor means to make heavy, other gods, right? That's what the Most High always told us. So why, in this verse right here, Exodus 22:28, is the Most High saying to not revile the gods? Let's read it. Exodus 22 and 28. Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. Now, if you just read that in the English and you just took it as that, guess what? It sounds like the Most High is saying you shouldn't hate the other gods, man. You shouldn't hate the other guys. You shouldn't talk bad about the other guys. You should honor the other guys. That's what it looks like, right? When you look in the English, this is what I'm telling you, the English falls short. So if anybody tells you all we need is the English language and the Most High preserved his word in the English, God preserves his word in the English, you say no, the English is corrupted, man. You got to go into the Hebrew at times. All right? Exodus 22 and 28, thou shalt not revile the gods. But in the previous scriptures, it said that take heed to ourselves that we not be deceived in the heart, and that we turn not aside to those other gods and serve them and worship them, which means to reverence. It said, but we should utterly overthrow their images and break down their images. We should not bow down to them or serve them or do after their works. But here's telling us thou shalt not revile the gods. So what gods is it talking about? This is where English falls short. This is what Prologue to Sirach says, that they have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated to other tongue have not the same force in them. Okay? When you look up Exodus 22 and 28, when you read it in the Hebrew, thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. The word God, the word behind gods is H4430, and it's Alachayim. Alachayim. It means ruler or judge. Okay? Now let's read it in the Hebrew. Alachayim, la'ah, duakolal, wanashaya, ba'aimka, la'ah, ta'ar. All right? Alachayim means judges. Okay? That's where it says gods. La'ah, not or no. Ta'kwalal, which means to make light. All right? Make light means to... See, this is another thing. For the word revile, it's not reviling in Hebrew. What the fuck is that? It's ta'kwalal. It means to make something light. All right? Going back to the concreteness of our language, you got things that are heavy and you got things that are light. In the Hebrew, to revile something or to hate something or to put something down, it was kwalal, which means light. Kwalal means to make light. All right, you made it light. Now, if you wanted to say reverence, it would be I'm sorry, I don't have it right now actually, but the word for in the Hebrew, the word, I don't have the word right now, but it means to make heavy. All right, we don't have honor in our language. We got to make something heavy and to make something light. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video with that word for honor. All right. All right, so yeah, takwalal, to make light. So the judges know make light. Wa nashaya, wa meaning and, nashaya meaning lifted one or leader. Okay? See how our language is? It's not leader, it's lifted one. Something lifted up, something held up. That was what we call our leaders. Nashaya. Wa nashaya. And the lifted up one are leaders. Ba'aimka. Ba'aimka. Ba means and, Aim is people, Ka means your. And Ba'aimka, and or of your people, La'ah, no, Ta'ar, no curse. Or don't do curses to. You see that? This is why you got to go into the Hebrew, man. Now, if that Christian would have read this, he would have got lost. But they don't read the Old Testament for some reason. This is why you got to go into the Hebrew. Now,